Hey, team players, welcome to another breakdown of fantasy football. And one of the things that's very important is actually addressing what the teams are going to do on the field so we know what their players are. And one of the...
do that.
All right, because you yawned in the middle of it?
Yep.
Hey, team players, welcome to another edition of us breaking down the teams in our lens through fantasy football. So often when we're looking at players, it's just based upon the numbers, but we lose track of what the situation is being on the field. And I think that looking at it from this lens gives a lot more insight into the players. And this is not meant to be a negative conversation, but actually to highlight some of the risk rather than just being general cheerleading. But one of the things that we have to be is realistic and honest. And one of the things that I think is a very big problem in fantasy football right now is Stevenson is not getting the love he should being New England's running back. When we look at the way that the New England Patriots are built, they first off are possibly having the largest, except for maybe the Colts, coaching addition in the NFL. Mm-hmm. By their replacement of their offensive coordinator, they are going to be going from literal incompetency to a Bill O'Brien's a very good offensive mind. Mm-hmm. Very good. Mm-hmm. And I believe when you look at that and you're upgrading coaching, the player that benefits the most is going to be the one who's the most talented as a starting point. And when you look at New England's offense, their offensive roster, without a doubt, of all of their skilled players, Ramondre Stevenson is by far the most talented athlete on that field. So therefore, I believe that he is prime for a great expansion. And this is kind of something that's going through the fantasy world that's just a Belichick-ism that's holding people back, Bob, is that for years it used to be one receiver, whether it be Edelman or Moss that year or whoever, just one receiver, you know you can tee up, they're going to get their 100 catches, and they'll be great for fantasy. And who knows in the running back world? Mm-hmm. And he has switched it. Basically, all of his targets this year in terms of the wide receivers and tight ends basically got 50 targets last year. So very big spreading the ball around, which is very actually good for your offense. But not a running back. Ball's going to Stevenson, and there's no competition there. And I think that Stevenson is primed. Like, this guy should not be a third-round player. He should be solidly in the second round.
The kickback there, Joe, on Ramondre Stevenson in a high position, third round, second round, like that, is there is some belief within people that are watching New England football is that Ty Montgomery and Pierre Strong are going to have a role within the offensive scheme, either as a committee running back or change of pace. Again, New England's running back situation isn't one that we typically want to draft at a high position. They've had some Corey Dillon has been good. We've had Kevin Falk and players like that have showed up, but you've drafted them not in
they normally end up being league winners because they became something, but they weren't intended to be.
So when you look at what New England did last year, 37% of their plays were rush plays, 62% were pass plays.
Which is horrible. They couldn't throw the ball. Why are you leaning on it so much?
And they were leaning a lot on passing, but Mac Jones completed 288 passes for a little bit under 3,000 yards and 14
he's under 60% completion, which is not acceptable in this league.
And granted, Bailey Zappi came in for a couple of games, but this offense was a mess. And with Bill O'Brien there, you have addition by subtraction where you are getting rid of Patricia and you are bringing in a guy that can actually coach football and coach an offense too. And when you look at like what Joe said, where is this going to fall? Well, Ramondre Stevenson has a lot of room to grow. There's a very good chance that Ramondre Stevenson, who had 1,000 yards last year, who averaged 5 yards per carry and got 5 touchdowns, that he can see a slight uptick in his usage. The offensive line is ranked 13th. There's a very good chance that his 210 carries could be a little bit more efficient this year, knowing that they're not going to be teeing up on him all the time. This is one of those fears that you have in Houston, where, especially with Dameon Pierce, where you have a guy with a high volume, but the production isn't as good as you want it to be because, all the defenses are teeing up on them. Now, the issue is yes, their offensive coordinator has changed, but they did draw the worst or hardest schedule in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at this and you say, okay, I've got Buffalo, Dallas, they can't have New England on their schedule, which is,
oh shit,
odd.
we had the wrong one over there. Let's restart that. Oh shit, so I had this wrong. They were not that far off though.
Yeah,
that's close enough. All right, so reset their schedule.
Yeah, so we'll reset. We'll start with the percentages.
That I was saying?
No,
because I forgot everything I said. So just go back to your schedule. So just their schedule.
So when we take a look at their schedule and knowing where they're coming from here, correction on the stat, they passed the ball 57% of the time and ran the ball 42% of the time. So it's a little bit more of an even distribution, but still, when the passing was so terrible last year, it's hard to think that you passed it more than you ran it. It just doesn't make any sense. So when you look at the schedule and you say, okay, well, I've drawn Philadelphia, Miami, Jets, Dallas, New Orleans, that could be a tough game. Vegas, that shouldn't be that hard. Well, then you're going back Buffalo, Miami. Indianapolis, we're not sure what's going to happen there. That's going to be over in London. You have the Giants, Chargers, Steelers late in the season, Kansas City late in the season. These are not games where we are fully expecting this offense for the Patriots to be explosive. And we're probably going to see a lot of defensive battles. These are probably going to be low-scoring games, minus maybe the Kansas City game. And this is kind of where the Patriots thrived last year in low-scoring games.
Well, they have to, yeah.
And that's not what you want for a fantasy team.
It's a proper fantasy.
This is why I'm a little less high on Stevenson than you are. Is I don't want, even though he's going to be the guy that they should rely on, with that concern with Ty Montgomery and Pierre Strong being there, they went out and got Juju for to help hopefully alleviate some of the discrepancies in their wide receiver room here. I am more likely to take one of these wide receivers late, hoping that maybe they hit, rather than take that risk on Ramondre Stevenson, because I don't know if a positive touchdown regression is going to be there from Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, it can't regress in his touchdowns. I only had 4 of them.
No, I'm positive regression. We're just going to go up.
Yeah, I think it has to.
And the volume is there. Is the volume going to go up, or is it going to stay relatively the same? Because if it stays relatively the same, 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, okay, that's going to be good if that's like my second running back, or maybe my third running back if I went running back early. But if I'm relying on him as my number 1 running back, say I took 2 wide receivers, say I took J. Jeff and Waddle, because this is typically where Ramondre Stevenson falls. Yeah, I'm a little less confident on that. But say I get Christian McCaffrey and Ramondre Stevenson, or Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, him as a 2 is fine. Yeah,
I'm not comfortable going into the season with Stevenson as my number 1 running back, knowing that Bill O'Brien is a good coach, but we don't know what this offense is necessarily going to look like.
Oh, yeah, we do. They're doing the opposite of what the rest of the NFL is. So the rest of the NFL is spread it out.
I'm not saying that.
This is my argument, though, for Stevenson. The whole rest of the NFL is spread it out in speed. So all the defenses are built to be lanky and lighter as a result. And these guys are built to play essentially 1993 football. We're going to run power, Emmitt Smith, and every once in a while we're going to throw it, but never really far downfield.
Here's what I mean by that, though, Joe, is that we know the ball's going to go to Ramondre Stevenson, especially in games that are low scoring. However, if it's low scoring and they can't get off the ground with Stevenson,
they're going to lose.
There's a good chance that they might abandon it and try to do something else with one of those other running backs.
I don't think they have a choice to abandon it.
They do, because what we saw from Pierre Strong last year in the limited time, that there's some capabilities there.
Oh, no. I mean, they can't abandon the run as a concept. They have to be. There's some teams like Buffalo that can just say, we're not running it anymore. We'll throw it to oblivion.
As a concept, they're not going to abandon it, but there are other rushers in this room that provide you different qualities that Ramondre Stevenson kind of has it all as one.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys have them all individually as in different ways, is what I'm saying. And so there's no reason that Mac Jones should be passing the ball a lot of times. So the pass catchers are probably going to have limited numbers, and that's why they're getting drafted so late. But I would take a chance on a guy like Juju because
he is the one. Yeah.
He's the one that seems to, they went out and they got him. And you're not, if you didn't plan on using him, you probably wouldn't have went out and paid him in free agency. Granted, not a lot of money, but still you wouldn't have went out and did that. They're really, Tyquan Thornton last year had some decent games. There's always going to be someone in Miami or someone like,
See, I think Juju has a chance to be their new version of Edelman. He's not super fast. He can do the slot machine stuff where he just gets a gajillion catches. But last year they didn't have that. But last year, again, they didn't have a capable coach. So,
right. And so
obviously I'm big on Stevenson for the high value stuff. But in terms of back end, give me someone late, I think Juju is completely acceptable. But when he's getting drafted, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's in the same ballpark as like Mike Williams.
No, he's lower than that.
Oh, he is? Okay.
He's getting drafted more late, a little bit on the back end with George Pickens. If you would have drafted George Pickens after that, would probably be around Juju. So his value, you're not investing a lot in Juju. But again,
it's like an 8th rounder.
But again, right. Again, is his ceiling high? Not necessarily, but it's not going to be much lower than it was last year. Last year with Kansas City, he got like 3 touchdowns and 700 yards anyway, and that
also got hurt.
Yeah, and so you take a look at it and you say, well, Mac Jones, could he?
That's 2 of the last 3 years. Juju's been hurt for a significant part of the season.
There's a good chance that that might happen again, and so. But there's minimal risk now. You're taking him much, much later, much, much lower. Devontae Parker, again, risk of injury, but you're taking him much later. Tyquan Thornton would be a free agent potentially this year for you. Kendrick Bourne would potentially be a free agent for you, sir.
So essentially, this is a wide receiver room we should just stream.
Yeah, if you're investing in New England Patriots players, the guy, like Joe said, that you're wanting to invest in is Ramondre. Personally, for me, though, I would want to have another running back in the room with Ramondre because I really don't see him as being as profitable as you think.
See, I think that there's a very good chance that I believe New England goes as far as Stevenson, and I think that they kind of have to lean into that mentality. They know Mac Jones is not Tom Brady who's going to throw them the victory.
They do, but here's what I'm going to.
But their line is built to blow up smaller defenses. Now the problem is 3 of their first 4 defenses they're playing to start the year are heavy. They're playing Philly, Jets, and Dallas. They ain't easy to run on. Like, sure, Miami's built to cover the pass, but this is not going to be a great start for Stevenson, no matter how you cut it.
And
it's a fact.
This is the other thing to think about.
It's a hard schedule.
This is the other thing to think about too is if Bill O'Brien can't get Mac Jones to throw the ball down the field to get in the red zone, there is going to be minimal red zone opportunities for Ramondre Stevenson. And we know, it is profitable, but to have a running back that gets red zone opportunities. And what I'm looking at from last year is a guy that, 400 yards on 60 receptions. That's good. You have 210 rushes for 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. 42% red zone scoring from New England in the red zone. There's not a lot of times that they got there last year. And when you have a quarterback that's not even passing for 3,000 yards, even if you modestly improve that and you take
him not getting hurt,
you take that to 3,500 and maybe 20 touchdowns, you're getting like a New York Giants kind of situation.
They're in trouble. I mean, we just look at the 2 basic metrics here that I think are good to look at what your offense doing compared to your defense. On offense, they're converting less than 35% of their third downs. They're allowing teams to do it at 40%. They're only scoring in the red zone 42% of the time. They're allowing teams against them to score 58%. And this is the long way to get to shading Stevenson. but I think they need to run the ball because they don't have another option. But game script is probably going to be against the Patriots all year long. And you think there's a chance that they finish low enough that they get Mac Jones' replacement next year?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but it's a very good possibility.
It might be possible. Well, that's a happy note to end New England with. We'll see you next week.